you guys don't know who Blair is, you probably have seen her do every interview that you have loved ever, from every tournament that you can think of, Houston, Cincinnati, any big tournament in the United States. Blair is there, on court, off the court, doing interviews, has been around the tennis world for such a long time, played college tennis. I mean, there's a long list that I can continue going with, Blair, but I'm just happy that you're here and thank you for joining us today.
Bill, this has been a long time coming. Good to
It's nice to finally have a familiar face that we see so often in the tennis world on our channel. And I think, Blair, for you, we just talked about your most recent quote unquote assignment. You are going to be with the Mike Cation in the Challenger World in Tyler. And tell us a little bit about this experience and what you're looking forward to the most coming up.
Yeah, I hearken back to 2020, just before the pandemic came, literally changed everyone's lives. I was at the Dallas Challenger at T-Bar M. I went, I was like, come on, sit in the booth with me. We'll get you some reps. And then so much changed after that. And finally, a few years later, I'm getting the chance to go back in the booth with Mike, again, a long time coming, going to the Tyler Challenger, which is about a little over 2 hours from where I live in the DFW area. And Mike, who is the master and knows certainly Challenger tennis better than about anyone. So to have the chance to be in the booth with him, to get some commentating reps, I would love to do more commentary in the future, but I also know that even if you know tennis really well, there is a rhythm and there is a skill set that I want to make sure I build before I am shooting for jobs that maybe, hopefully there are going to be tons of people watching on their feed. Don't get me wrong. I want to make sure that I really build that good foundation, and there's nobody better to do it with than Mike Cation.
And I think that's a perfect kind of segue into that kind of announcer life, because he's been doing it for such a long time. People that know challengers and watch lower level tennis know who Mike is. They know him from the Behind the Racquet podcast with Noah. They know him from Challenger and USTA level tournaments. But I think for you, where did you start being in this world? Because I know you've done on-court interviews. I know you've done off-court interviews. You've been the host of many tournament social medias. How did you get into this world?
Not on purpose. I didn't actually think it was a thing that I could do, to be honest. I started writing. I started writing for Tennis Now, and they also had a pretty significant YouTube following. And so that's where I first got in front of a camera and was able to write my own scripts and realize that there was a community of people who loved tennis on YouTube. I mean, better than anyone. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it and trying to make tennis news fun. So being informative, but also trying to make it fun. And it was because I think I had that written plus a little bit of on-camera experience that in 2015, I was given the opportunity to be the MC on Court 17 at the US Open. Shout out to Michael Feuer, who is still my boss at the US Open, who trusted me. Maybe he was desperate, I don't know, to do that job when I had no experience. And just like commentary is a different skill set than being on court and doing live interviews and playing to the crowd in front of a live audience. That is also different from being in a studio and shooting videos. They're all sort of different skill sets. And I think there's maybe a misconception that, well, if you commentate, sure, you can hop out there and do an interview. Or if you're interviewing on court, sure, you can hop in the booth and commentate. And really, I think they are different skill sets and they take some work to get good at.
What would you say the biggest difference is between the two? Because while you're on court announcing, you kind of have your cards that you can read throughout the match and you kind of have some time to prepare. But with announcing, you have to do so much, or at least those that put in that work, like we've seen with other people, with Gruskin, with Cracked Rackets, Mike Cation with Challengers. What do you feel like is the biggest difference between the two?
So between commentary and between on-court, learning how to play to the crowd was one of the biggest things that I had to sort of learn as I went along, sort of learning. And it's shtick makes it sound inauthentic. I try to make it as authentic as I can, because I genuinely do like that crowd connection. And my hope is that's what, you know, if somebody's coming to a tennis event for the first time, that's what makes them stick around. And not only my ability to connect with the crowd, but my ability to sort of serve as a conduit for the players to connect with the crowd. That's always my hope when I'm on court. And that took some getting used to, the flow, the making sure there's not a lot of dead time, making sure you can ask questions that get a reaction or whatever it is. Being in a commentary capacity, which I've done a little bit of in the sideline side of things. So in Houston, I did sideline reporting the past 2 years, as well as the post-match interviews. And then at NCAA's just a couple of weekends ago, 2 weekends ago, I also did sideline reporting there as well. And I will tell you, the research side of things, especially for college tennis, when these aren't necessarily people that, you know, and props to the people who do follow college tennis week in and week out. I keep an eye on it. I keep a finger on the pulse, but I don't necessarily know that, I don't know, somebody broke their ankle last season and has had an amazing comeback at the beginning of 2023, or, you know, those backstories to me, especially with college tennis, you have to humanize the players, because if somebody is watching on Tennis Channel and seeing the NCAA team semifinals, it's unlikely that they know about so-and-so's backstory. And to me, humanizing it, making it fun, why should we care about these people other than the fact that they're really good at tennis, which I would love to say that that is the only thing that matters. But I have found in my line of work that if you can give people a reason to remember someone other than, wow, they have a really great backhand, it's really helpful. So I will tell you, I did so much research going in to NCAA's, and then the poor men, it rained, and then they didn't even get to be on the Tennis Channel broadcast. I'm like, wait a second, I have so many fun facts about these teams. I did so, you know, talking to some of the coaches who were nice enough to, you know, I reached out to them and I was like, listen, I know you're not in the semifinals yet. If you are, I want to be able to do a really great job covering it, because there's no way to wait to see who got there and then have one night to do all the research. Like I had to reach out to some of the coaches in advance. So I had on the men's side, I had so much good info, but, you know, got to channel it all into the women's side, which ended up being just great. And it was really neat to see them get the spotlight. But woo, it was, I mean, pages and pages and pages, because you don't really know how things are going to. And so you don't know if having some random fact from junior tennis might actually come in handy. So exactly, I'm an over researcher anyway. So
that's okay. We like that, because I can go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I feel like I've done that so many times. When I first started out, I would have so much research on a player, and I would always request to interview one afterwards, just to do like a 5-minute feature. And then I would go through all of it. They would ask, and then they say no. And I'm going, well, I just wasted about 3 hours of my life. But it's still, I don't think it's a waste. I think it's a learning experience, because you still learn about people's stories, and you still learn how to construct a conversation with someone, whether or not it's the same person from the same country or something within those lines. But it's more about understanding where everyone comes from. So if they still say no, you still have some notes about what happened to them. So you can bring that along. You see them at another tournament, you just have more to add to the fire of which you hope you can have a conversation with.
Yeah, you're totally right. It helps build a foundation. That's why I said, you know, I hope that we can do this again next year, because all the foundational knowledge. And again, I thought I had, you know, it's not like I was going in clueless. I did some commentary this year at SMU, props to the SMU program, and Grant Chen really working to put more college tennis on TV. So I've been able to do that. I am, you know, reading the tweets. I'm always keeping a finger on the pulse, but whoo, I had my work cut out for me. So I'm hoping I get a chance to do it again next year. But yeah, the research, if you do it well, and if you do it right, it's a lot. And I think for me, part of the learning curve is figuring out what information is most useful. Because it's relatively new to me, it's easy to get overwhelmed by all the information. Figuring out what's best to focus on, what ends up being most useful on a broadcast. I'll probably still always be an over researcher, but I think the more I do it, the more you're thinking, okay, this is what I need to focus on. This is the stuff that I use most. Maybe it makes the research process easier down the road.
No, I definitely agree. And for you too, when you go into these opportunities that you have, how would you describe the feeling of, well, I wouldn't say the feeling, but the idea of being in front of a live crowd and having something go kind of off track? Has that ever happened to you? Or is that like, have you learned to deal with something that happens like that? Or is it, you just take it as it goes?
Yeah, no, I've definitely had many things go wrong live on court. That is the one thing I think maybe people don't totally understand, is that in a given day as an on-court MC, there are so many things that can go wrong. You know, if something doesn't go wrong in a day, that's an amazingly good day, because there are so many things that can go wrong. And it also depends on what court you're on. You know, for instance, on Stadium 3 at Indian Wells, I'm making sure the players don't walk on the court too early. I'm making sure fans are trying to take selfies with the players as they're waiting to walk on the court. And I'm also listening to a producer in my ear telling me when to do the intro on court. There are just a lot of things that can go wrong. I've had players enter from the wrong side of the court. I'm waiting literally at the other corner, and people start clapping, and I turn around like, oh, there's a player walking onto the court. There are many things, but recently at Indian Wells, actually, I had a moment where it was a learning experience. It actually didn't involve a player. It was Fila Day. It was a giveaway day.
Okay.
We had, shirts to give away and sunglasses. And depending on who the first match is on Stadium 3 at Indian Wells, oftentimes you can get a pretty full stadium for your morning welcome. So at I don't know, 10 till 5 till 11. Which is great, because believe me, I've done morning welcomes to like 5 people. So doing it to a full stadium is a luxury. But I had a shirt to give away, and I said, all right, we're going to start the day off with some good old fashioned competition. We're going to go north side, south side, east side, west side. I want to see how loud you can get. Loud side, I'm going to throw the t-shirt out to you guys. And so I, again, totally misjudged things, and will think about this differently if I ever have the opportunity to do this again. Let me tell you, if anybody was walking by, they would have been thinking, what's going on Stadium 3? Because each side, people got into it. And I ended up giving it to the side with the fewest people, because I was like, they more than pulled their weight. Oh, because it was the sunny side, of course. I'm like, I also have to stare at the sun. So I go to throw the shirts, and I'm just going to blame my imaginary stage manager that I didn't have for not tying said shirt properly. Just kidding. There was no stage manager. I did not make sure it was tied correctly. And I have a decent arm, not to toot my own horn, but I can.
But Blair's got a cannon.
I can throw a shirt. Well, the shirt. So I see this woman in the front row of the bleacher level.
Yeah.
I can get it there. And, she was all decked out in tennis gear. Yeah. And I go to throw it. It unravels in midair, and the saddest, blah, 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 blah. Doesn't make it. It makes it 4 rows into the bottom level. And when I tell you, Phil, boos, loud boos. I got straight up booed. but not a few boo. It was a chorus.
Everyone saw it.
Yes. That's why it's just rare. So often in that morning welcome, people are not paying attention. And I don't know if it was because there was free stuff involved, because let me tell you, there's people one thing I'm seeing, we'll show you. It could be a stadium of millionaires, and they would still want that keychain that you were throwing out. But anyway, so rains boos, and then this sweet older woman is like, yay, I have a chance to get the shirt. she walks around to get the shirt, and everybody knew it was meant for this woman, and she was with a kid. And I always try to give it to people with kids because I'm like, I don't have things for everyone. You can't really complain if a kid is getting something. So this old woman picks up the shirt. She has no idea I was aiming for the woman with the kid in the first row. She picks up the shirt, rains down booze again. And I'm like, wow, this has really got off the rails. I'm going to put this in my memoir. Didn't see this coming. So anyway, woman realizes eventually that she is being booed.
Yeah.
Yes, all's well that ends well. Somebody said it was for the woman with the child up there. So she takes the shirt, gives it to the woman who had the kid with her. And then got cheers. And I brought the woman an extra t-shirt. All's well then. But don't worry though. Let me tell you, we had other shirts to give away that day, Phil. I wrapped those things so tight with rubber bands, and I was like chucking them to the upper deck because I want to be like,
I can't throw.
You guys are booing my arm. It was a faulty wrap job. But yeah, total miscalculation. Didn't think people would be that invested whatsoever, but lesson learned. So I'm still learning how sort of stadium group works and how to best
group therapy for fans of be nice to one another.
Goodness gracious. You know, and even like I did pickleball as well this year. I did one of the Major League Pickleball events.
How was that? I'm actually very curious to hear from going from tennis to pickleball and this weird feud that's happening between the two sports, because we're getting it here when I work at a country club of people asking how, like, do we have pickleball? Do we have this? Do we have that? And we do, but it's slowly getting there because we have all hard true courts and we don't have any hard courts. Yep. So talk to us a little bit about your experience with the MLP, I believe.
Yes. So I did the first MLP event of the year. I was the stadium MC, and I think it's a great format. People, for the most part, it was full. The first day, they're 4-day events. The first day was maybe a little bit slower, but Friday, Saturday, Sunday, people like sat there from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. when we finished. People were people were engaged, and maybe it's because they knew that if they left their seat, they might not get it back. But they had, you know, there are certain events where I have to fight to get, you know, they want me to engage the crowd. And I'm like, okay, well, what do you have for me to engage the crowd with? And to pickleball's credit, when I tell you I had crates of things to throw out, I probably threw out a prize for every human who was there. But don't worry, people still like, you've given a prize to everyone but me. Like, y'all.
When they have it behind their back, hiding the one that you already gave them. God. I want the better one.
Yeah, it's when it comes to prizes, people really feel entitled to prizes. I have seen it.
It's just free stuff. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's free, people want it.
Yes.
So it becomes very chaotic. That's the word I would use for that.
Yeah, I mean, people get aggressive. I'm like, oh, please give it to the kid behind you who I was actually throwing it to. But, you know, what are you going to do? You just have to.
So if you guys see Blair emceeing your court, just grab a random child and have them stand next to you. So that way the kid will get two things. They'll get the shirt and then the $5 you paid them to stand next to you so you can get the shirt.
Exactly. There's your strategy, because I will find the kids. That is one thing I will say about MLP. Mostly older fans, and that could have been for a variety of reasons. It's funny, I did find some kids, and several of them were children of the players. Like, my dad.
There it is.
Like, well, here's a t-shirt anyway. But it's engaging. It's fun to watch live. There are other things that they do. You know, for instance, there aren't any rules on when you can enter the stadium. And granted, it's I don't know how big, 800 seat space. Yeah. It's not the one that I went. I think some of the others are slightly larger. That one wasn't that large, but you can walk around. You're not locked out for the first, you know, it would be different, whatever until the first time out or the first changeover. there are things that tennis can do better to make things more fan friendly. And I think that pickleball is really geared towards, I should say specifically Major League Pickleball, because that is the only side of things that I have a personal experience with that. And I did the Pickleball Slam, which people were very invested in that also.
Okay, good.
Even the former tennis players who played were very invested in that, which I think was, you know, everybody was thrilled with how that event went all the way around. But I just think the fan-friendly side of things is something that tennis has to consider.
Embrace. Yeah.
Yes. And I also think, and we'll see how professional pickleball ends up shaking out down the road, but it seems to me, at least at this point, that the professionals today understand that they are playing a role in growing the sport. Whereas in tennis, yes, I think players understand that to a point, and some do more than others. But
obviously,
there's some, especially now in the post Big Three Serena era, I think that there is maybe more value now to player accessibility than there has been maybe for the past 15 years, just because people have to get to know players to be invested in following them. Yes, you're going to have the tennis diehards who are going to love watching tech play because she's
know everyone in it.
Yes, but there is that other aspect where if somebody goes to one tennis tournament and has an amazing experience because Ons Jabeur, I don't know, came up to them and was Ons Jabeur to them, you know, once, and you're hooked. But it just, the accessibility, I think, is going to become more important in tennis and in the present and in the next few years, sort of rebuilding.
And I like how you brought that up too, because with that transition from pickleball to tennis and the amount of attention pickleball is getting and what they've done to market and what they've done to invest into not just the players, but the tournaments, the venues, the kind of not lifestyle, but the way they go about their tournaments. And it seems like tennis still, I wouldn't say has been lapped, but within a matter of 6 months, I feel like pickleball has already done a better job of marketing their tournaments and their players than tennis has within the last 5 years. And even though Netflix has come out with their docuseries with which you have done, I believe, the reunion for, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, she has. And having that access to players, it's something that needs to be done more often. And what you said earlier today with humanizing these players and humanizing their story and understanding where they're coming from, I feel like tennis can do a lot better job to these players than what's been happening lately. And it has gotten better. And we have seen an increase of what it's been doing, but I still feel like there's something missing or there's something lacking that could be better to grow a sport. And I always say for the casual fan, because that's what's happening with a lot of these tournaments. They're events for people to go to. They're not just for tennis fans. So how do we grow it for that casual fan that wants to have that sense of entertainment?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question. It's, even when I was in Orlando for NCAAs and I, you know, for the women's semis and finals, the stands are packed. I mean, standing, granted, there's not that much seating, and one day it would be great to see, you know, I don't know if it's even possible to add more, but it was packed, and that is amazing. And if you have seen college tennis live, you know that it is an incredible product, and a lot of the changes they've made to scoring to shorten things a little, I think, has been incredibly helpful. But it's a tough sell as a TV product still, and even to get people there in person, it's not the easiest. I'm thinking, why is that? Because if you've seen it, it's incredible, and I feel like it just has to be that you've got to get people in to begin with, and I don't know, is it prizes? Probably not.
Free stuff.
The prizes can't hurt. Listen, I know on college campuses, it's like free burritos.
Exactly.
There's 25 people or whatever. So listen, I know that they do their best, but I'm like, it is such a great product. Why is it such a hard sell? And I don't know. I don't know what it is. I wish I had the magic answer. But I know, I mean, so broadcast rights that's where so much of the money comes from. And even if somebody wants to go to the US Open every year, and that's like their, tennis fringe fans, they keep an eye on it, they're not focused on it all year round, and they love going to the US Open every year. Are those people watching it on TV? I don't know. I don't think so. And so it's creating the interest where you can get people to pay attention all year, because really it's that the big money is coming from the broadcast rights. So it is a big question mark. I don't envy the people who are trying to figure it out. But I think a lot starts with making things more fan friendly. And one thing that pickleball has, I think, done really well is sort of embrace the influencer culture. I mean, the fact that the MLP owners are a who's who
of
sports and entertainment.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt, to have Dude Perfect signing on as a Major League Pickleball owner, because it makes people who have perhaps never thought, the Dude Perfect fan base, probably maybe those people have never even thought about pickleball.
Exactly.
And but they're like, what is this thing? And I think there are people like Ocho Cinco loves tennis.
Jimmy Butler too. It's the big celebrities from sports that are big in the US that make it popular, because besides the Ocho Cinco and Jimmy Butler, other celebrities or all-stars, it's rare to see them play tennis or have access to it. I think last year I saw Kevin Durant playing pickleball, and I'm going to myself, there's never been a video of a fan videoing a celebrity playing tennis in their local community, but you see all these other celebrities playing pickleball for who knows what reason. And that star power is what really is attracting all of these new viewers to that sport. And tennis needs a little bit more of that.
And they exist though. That is why it just makes me think: are we just not doing a good enough job of not exploiting is not the word, but taking advantage in a positive way? Like there are these people who a lot of people who don't focus on tennis look up to, love, idolize, whatever.
Exactly.
It wouldn't be bad if we could utilize that more so in the tennis space.
And I totally agree. And for you too, if you were to, and I know you said you don't have a magic answer for it, but if you could change one thing, and let's take the fan experience because we talked about that, what's one thing that you would change to make it more accessible to fans or to casual fans in the tennis world?
I don't know. I mentioned the broadcast rights thing. Somebody tweeted how many different channels Roland Garros is going to be on if you live in North America or the States. Maybe it was specific to the States. It's impossible to find it. And if you love tennis, you're probably not going to be shelling out for Tennis Channel. So I was so sad when Tennis Channel left YouTube TV, because there just aren't, if you're not somebody like you or me, you might not be spending the extra money to get Tennis Channel another way if it's not on YouTube TV anymore. So I think, and again, it's all so money related that I don't know that there is a solution to the broadcast side of things unless, and that is another thing that I think, at least at this point, it has maybe been helpful with pickleball, is that so much of it has just been streamed freely as they've been going, is that it's been kind of easy to find and to figure it out. Maybe that will eventually change when more networks and there's more money involved in all those things, but that doesn't help. I don't know the solution though, but it's really unfortunate because there is some NBC coverage on Peacock.
There is. It's NBC, and I think NBC kicks in later in the day for the later rounds, and then Tennis Channel has everything in the morning. But again, the fact that it's on two different channels at two different times with two different casts of characters is very, very difficult for anyone to follow, because it's like, oh, it popped up on NBC. Oh, but I thought it was on Tennis Channel. And then it gets into that argument of, how do I keep track of something where I don't know where to find it? So it is one of those things where it becomes very difficult, not just for us to follow, but for anyone that just wants to turn on their TV and flips through channels to find something entertaining. And I think the streaming and what our society has gone through, and maybe you've seen this as well, but going through Twitch, going through YouTube Live, going through all these streaming platforms that have everything. And the reason why Cracked Racquets had so many viewers is because they give the access to people to a site that's free to anyone to use. So, and I think that's what a couple tournaments did a while ago. They would stream, I think the ATP did live practices on YouTube for a while, as well as the Master Monte Carlo did. So like just having stuff like that where you get people to tune in for whatever reason makes it a lot easier for us to get access and just to watch.
Yes, all true. I just wish, I don't know who would have to come in and say,
yeah,
if we're thinking long term, we need to revamp how this is done, because people want to get paid, and I get that. I get that too. People want to get paid now. People aren't necessarily thinking about getting paid 10 years from now.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's tough. I also, on that note, I am in the Francis Tiafoe camp, where I think having there be a little bit more freedom within a match. I had a friend who came to the WTA finals in Fort Worth, and he left to go get food and a drink after the second set of doubles. He didn't know that it was a super tie break for the third set, or a tie break for the third set, and couldn't get back in, and missed the entire end of the match. And that, listen, that I feel like there are a lot of people who wouldn't know that, who weren't following tennis week in, week out. And the fact that he was a paying customer who missed the entire end of this really exciting doubles match, that's a problem. It
does make sense.
Yeah, and I get the distraction side of things. I just wonder if there's a way to compromise. Maybe we sort of ease it in. Yes, like compromise to begin with, just experiment, see how it goes, because it's not appealing. Like when I see those huge lines of people with their food and drinks waiting in line, and the first 3 games of a match could take 15 minutes plus. So
it's hard to watch, because sometimes, like, I understand that you want to concentrate as a player, maybe because I haven't played in a crowd of stadiums, but the fact that you're looking up, especially at the US Open, if you're looking up in Arthur Ashe and you see people moving, why does that affect your concentration? Your eye line doesn't even go. You have to like put a kink in your neck just to look at the people that are moving, maybe 3 stories above you. Like that to me doesn't make sense. So for me, if I was to change anything, have the top 2 be able to move around, try it, and only the bottom bowl has to move in and out every 3 games, or keep it the same for the bottom, because that's where it really affects them. But the top level shouldn't have any effect on what the player is doing on the court.
I actually think in Arthur Ashe there is freedom up high. I'm fairly sure. But again, how many stadiums are as big as Arthur Ashe Stadium? I think there's maybe something at Indian Wells, because that's I think second largest at about 16,000 seats.
Oh,
maybe it's not. It's probably
close.
And Armstrong are probably close. I just don't know that anyone, maybe people are thinking about it, and I just don't know, but I just feel like it's worth putting some thought into, if thought is not already put into it.
Exactly.
I don't know if you're familiar with the Savannah Bananas.
Oh yeah, that for those of you that don't know, they're very popular. They're like the Harlem Globetrotters, but for baseball. Grew a huge following for TikTok, and now what went from a bankrupt AA affiliate to now one of the most popular sports, I would say, organizations right now, because of how well they're able to channel pop culture and how well they're able to channel like relating to other people. And tennis to me doesn't have that at all. I feel like it does to some degree, but correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think there's anyone, and I think Sissipas is the closest one to doing something different as a personality with his YouTube channel, with his vlog, and we're seeing that with some of the girlfriends of players. Like Bloomfield is doing it for Tiafo, Morgs is doing it for her YouTube channel, but that's the only access that you have for pop culture for tennis.
I hope it'll be interesting to see what season 2 of the Netflix series looks like. I think maybe, I don't know, lessons learned sounds really serious, but I think there were some things in the first half that maybe fans would have wanted to see more of.
Okay.
I don't know if that is going to change maybe the perspective of the second half. Also, it's different personalities. I don't know. I have not seen it.
Okay, just making sure. Maybe you know something that I don't. So we're trying to get that insight, Blair.
I have no inside scoop. But I'm hoping though that we get a reunion part 2.
That would be fun.
We really enjoyed shooting that, and I think it was one of those concepts that initially people are like, you want to try to do what? Because it is to get multiple players in the same place. 6
players on the ATP with the schedule, it's impossible. So unless they're all top tier playing at one big tournament, that's the only time you can really do it.
And then do they want to give up their time to do something like that? But I think though that what we did in Indian Wells, the players who did it, from the feedback that I heard, enjoyed that it was different. And the hope was to get them talking with each other, which I feel like we accomplished. But again, now that the agents and the comms teams know how it turned out and how we made it work, I think the hope is that if we ever got the chance to do it again, it would be much easier, because I know it took a little faith for sure for some of the agents to put their player in that room and say, all right, well, just see how this goes. But it was really interesting, and something I don't think we get that often, to see the players responding to one another.
Yes, I agree. And Blair, I can't thank you enough for doing this with me. I know your time is very valuable, so I just appreciate you guys doing this for us. And if you want to follow Blair on her journey, please follow her on Twitter. Instagram is also a good source for you as well. Is there anything else you want to shamelessly plug before we leave?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, I'll always take you up on a shameless plug, but I will. I just made official my relationship with Wilson, and my hope is to have more tennis content on particularly on Instagram, but probably a little bit of both.
Okay, good.
Engage more with that community, kind of what I did when I was working at Tennis Now. So
okay.
Blair Henley on Instagram, y'all. There'll be more tennis stuff, I promise. Maybe some of my kids mixed in, but mostly tennis.
That's okay. But that's okay. Mom first, tennis later. So and her Texas really came out when she said y'all. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And make sure to go show Blair some love in the comments. Thank you guys.